Hello everybody and welcome back to the Data Playbook. Today we have the Sunday pregame reviews, so let's get right into it. Here in this game we have Atlanta at New England, where New England is favored on the money line with a spread of 4.5 and a total point line of 45.5. So this should be an interesting matchup with all the different rankings we have. Atlanta is one of the worst teams at scoring for themselves and about average at stopping other teams from scoring, even though they're the best team at stopping the pass, and that goes along with tight ends. But they're one of the worst at stopping the rush. But they're in the bottom third at stopping the rush. Otherwise, their offensive stats are about average, rushing a little better, passing a little worse. With New England, you have a really good scoring rank and a very good prevention defense at scoring. So they're one of the top teams at preventing their opponents from scoring. They also have a pretty good passing rank and a very good allowed rushing rank, meaning they're very good at stopping their opponents from rushing. They do lack at stopping the pass, and they're not as great at rushing, about average. They're also not great at stopping tight ends, even worse than their average passing rank, but they do like to utilize their tight end. And so here's the averages on how that stacks up. For the quarterbacks, we have Michael Penix and Drake May, with Michael Penix having an average of 13 fantasy points per game this season, and Drake May having an average of 21.6. Both these guys have 3 passing interceptions this season, and both have lost a fumble due to a sack. Here's their averages if you need them, as well as their weekly breakdowns. And looking at the impact that they have on the rushing game, Michael Penix has a pretty small one with only 8.8% of the rushing carry share, where Drake May has a bigger impact with 24% of the team's rushing carry share. Your running backs in this game are Bijan Robinson and Trayvon Henderson, because Stevenson is hurt. So Bijan averages 21.6 fantasy points per game, while Trayvon's only averaged about 6.6. Both these guys have 1 rushing fumble this season. And if we look at their averages, this is how it breaks down. Bijan does get the largest share of carries on his team, with almost 55%. However, Tyler Algier does get quite a bit too, with almost 31.6%. Over here with the Patriots, you have Stevenson only getting about 39% of the team's carry share right now, much of that shared with Drake May and Henderson here. And now with Henderson getting the starting role while Stevenson's out, that may grow here. And he had a good last week, also something to note. So we'll see how he picks it up. Your number 1 receivers in this game are Drake London and Stephon Diggs. London's averaged 15.8 fantasy points per game, while Stephon Diggs has averaged 11.8. The only turnover comes from Drake London with 1 receiving fumble. And we flip over to the averages and take a look at their receiving share. You have Drake London with a 28.9% of the team's total receiving share, which is the largest total out of anybody on the team. And with Diggs, he has a share of 23% of the team's total receiving share, which is also the largest of anybody's share on the team. For the number 2 receivers, you have Darnell Mooney and Keyshawn Buett. Mooney has averaged 5.3 fantasy points per game this season, and Keyshawn has averaged 12 with no turnovers. And the averages flipped over. Mooney gets 9.7% of the team's total receiving share, which is pretty small compared to some of these other guys, which are also your running backs, with Bijan, I think, at 25% here, and potentially Kyle Pitts, we'll see here in a minute. Keyshawn gets 21.1% of the team's total receiving share, which is the second largest on the team. So ending with our tight ends, you have Kyle Pitts and Hunter Henry. Pitts averaging 11.3 fantasy points per game, and Hunter Henry averaging 10, with no other turnovers, and their averages up now. We can look at their receiving share, and you have Kyle Pitts with that 21.2% of the team's total receiving share, which is quite a large part for a tight end. But Hunter Henry also gets 15.5% of the team's total receiving share, which is, I think, the 3rd largest of anybody on the team. So this should be a good competitive game. We'll see. I think there'll be a lot of passing from Drake May, since they can't rely on their running backs as much, and they have a backup as their starter this week. I think you might see the opposite from Atlanta. They might really depend on passing. So it all depends on if the Patriots can break the great passing defense from Atlanta, or if they get stuffed. So that's all I have for this game today. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave a like and subscribe, and leave a comment on what else you might want to see in the future. Other than that, thank you so much for watching.